Welcome to Gildan. Gildan is a leading supplier of quality branded basic family apparel, including t-shirts, fleece, sport shirts, socks, and underwear. Today we are going to show you the basics for successful printing with some of our more popular products. The first step in any print job on our shirts or sweatshirts is creating the screen. A screen is made of a piece of mesh stretched over a frame. A stencil is formed by blocking off parts of the screen in the negative image of the design to be printed. That is, the open spaces are where the ink will appear on the substrate. Once the screen is stretched and in place, you can move to the emulsion phase. Emulsion can be applied directly by hand or indirectly by a machine. Your emulsion manufacturer will have recommendations on how many coats to put down for the print side versus the squeegee side. The two factors to keep in mind for the emulsion process are 1. The thicker the emulsion, the thicker the stencil, thus more ink deposited onto the shirt. 2. The actual size of the screen mesh itself. Once you have coated the screen in emulsion, you must let it thoroughly dry before you print. The next step is to get your design onto the screen. There are different ways to approaching this. You can print to film using a printer, take the film and tape it to the screen, then seal that film to the emulsified screen using a vacuum process. Once the film is adhered to the screen is exposed to a high-intensity light source that burns the design into your emulsion. Check with your manufacturers to get their recommended exposure times, as it varies by emulsion. It is highly recommended to do a few exposure tests to ensure you have the right process in place for your materials. The other method is printing the design direct to screen. In this method, you can skip the vacuum process, which saves a bit of time and money. Once your design has been burned into the emulsion, you'll need to rinse off the screen, washing away the shapes of your design, essentially creating a stencil for the ink to pass through later. You're almost ready to start printing. You'll want to tape off the screen and frame to prevent any unwanted ink from leaking. Remember to keep in mind what kind of inks you are working with and what kind of processes you will be adding to your garments. Water-based and plastisols are the two most common inks one would work with. Plastisol inks are a solvent-based ink that can sit on a shelf forever. Once they're mixed, they will keep their color and vibrancy and never cure, unless they are hit with heat. Water-based inks can dry out and will dry in your screens, so always take care when using them. It is recommended to use water-based inks on lighter colored shirts. When using on darker shirts, issues of fading and bleeding can sometimes occur. Mix all your inks based on manufacturer recommendations. There are many recipes out there for ink making, and it can be done manually or by machine. The machines shown here use precise weight measurements to get incredibly accurate to Pantone colors. Your prep work is done. Now it's time to set up for printing. Make sure you set up all your screens and make sure they are in registration. This can be done by eye or by using grid marks and locking down the screens. The number of screens you use will depend on the number of colors for the job, the kind of processes you are adding to the garment, the color of the garment, and the material the garment is made from. Once your pre-registration is done, you may start applying the appropriate inks to each screen. When the ink is on the screen and ready, a squeegee will help push the ink through the screen and the openings you created earlier and transfer the ink directly to the garment. This can be done manually with a hand squeegee or by machine with the use of a flood bar. You will repeat this process for each color of ink that is required and any adhesives or finishing you'd like. There are a couple things to watch out for when printing. One of the most misunderstood processes is printing on polyesters. Inks tend to bleed more on polyester garments, both 100% and 50-50 blends. Red fabrics bleed especially bad. Blues also prove to be tricky. It is recommended to put down a poly blocker on your first screen and then flash drying it. Then you can lay down your additional colors over your base. This will ensure the color of the garment won't bleed through and your colors will remain vibrant. Using poly performance inks is absolutely necessary, but it's not enough. If you don't use a blocker, then bleed through is likely to occur. When a shirt has finished receiving all of the ink and/or adhesives, it is removed from the press and cured in a dryer. This helps set the ink in place and prepares the garment for its finishing, if necessary. Some things to keep in mind when curing your final garment. There is a big difference for water-based inks versus plastisol inks, and cotton shirts versus polyester shirts versus polyblend shirts. so make sure you have done some test runs of your dryer to prevent scorching your garments. In the case of 100% polyester shirts, do not hot stack the garments at the end. The heat will have an adverse effect on your design. Doing a little work on the front end and speaking to the manufacturers of your inks will go a long way to delivering the best quality print on the best quality product. Visit mygildan.com for more tips, tricks, and information about all things Gildan.